Hello YouTube, this is Mahadev the Thunder Wizard. Alright, so I'm going to finish reading my book, Awakening Sleipnir. So I guess I have to talk a little bit about this last part. So again, let me remind you where this was. How long ago was this that I wrote this? It had to have been coming on 10 years ago. And what was going on was that I was writing these books because I was literally getting these downloads from my ancestors and from the gods, the elves, whoever. And I couldn't, I mean, it was driving me crazy. I had to get it out. So these books were a way for me to just to be sane again, because just all this like stuff had been downloaded into me and I had to get it out. As I've shared in previous videos, it was not my intention to start worshiping the gods of my ancestors. I was perfectly happy with the Taoist stuff I was doing and the Vedic stuff I was doing and the African shamanic drumming I was doing. I was perfectly happy with that. They were profound, and not realizing it at the time, but what made them so profound for me was that they were traditions that had an unbroken connection into prehistory. They weren't something that had been made up in modern times. And so it wasn't a pride thing. It was literally like a physical feeling thing. It was, I mean, I'm drinking this fruit juice right here because it tastes good and my body likes it. When I get it in there, my body says, yeah, I need this stuff. So that's why I drink it. I don't have any pride about it. So my spirituality has been the same too. I don't do it for anybody else other than it makes me feel good. And so when I started doing this work, I had no idea other people were into it. I didn't know there was such a thing as Asatru or Odinism or any of whatever heathenism. I didn't know it existed. And so when I started trying to connect with people who I thought would really appreciate what I was doing, I was very shocked to find out that they didn't like what I was doing at all, and I wasn't part of their deal. And of course, I ran into the squeaky wheels, which are the racists. And so a lot of what I was writing here was in response to that, because I guess maybe, I have created something here which is a place where people don't have to buy into a religion. And let me just say very clearly, I am not into any religion. I'm not an Asatru. I hear people, when I go, just to finish this part of the book up, I just did a cursory search on YouTube, and people talk about Asatru like this religion, and you have to be, they treat it like this club that you have to be a part of, and if we're gonna let you come to bloats, or we're gonna have, it's just all this, it's like trying to get into a biker gang or something. It's just not my thing. It's okay with me if that's what you want to do. It's not unique to Asatru. A lot of religions do that kind of stuff, and a lot of cults do that kind of stuff, and it doesn't necessarily make it bad. If you want to do that, go right ahead. If you want to be a part of a group, I'm not. I'm very much of a loner, but some people like to be part of a group, and if that's your thing, by all means, go for it. But let's be clear: Asatru is an invented religion that was invented within the last 40 years. And to my knowledge, I could be wrong about this, but to the best of my knowledge, I think Stephen McNallen, and I think that's his name, and others like that, started seeking to create an organized religion that they termed as Asatru, which means true to the Aesir. And now he brought his own political and racial and exclusive beliefs into it. Folkish, tribalist, whatever word you want to use. He's the one that brought that into it. And, he and his cohorts or others like him. He probably wouldn't have been the only one because it was done long before that. In case you don't know, the word folkish, right? If you think folkish is a safe word to use, folkish was actually coined by the Nazis. And it was going to be the state religion that they were going to create, after they had purified, quote unquote, their country. Then they were going to institute this folkish religion, which was racist and exclusive and all kinds of other things. So that's where that term comes from. Now, you may not think of it that way, but that's where it came from, like it or not. That's why it's been introduced. That's why it's been used. And so let's be really clear. This is a religion that has been created within the past few decades, and it has always had a racialist tinge to it. So whether or not somebody, if they're folkish, does that mean they're racist? Maybe not. I still think you can't avoid the inherent racism in any religion that excludes people simply because of genetics. You can't. You can say the people aren't racist. Some of my best friends are, whatever ethnic minority you want to claim as your best friend. That statement itself is racist. So you can't get away from it. You may or may not be. I don't know you. But let's just be really clear. If you want to follow the path of our ancestors, it doesn't mean you have to join this newest neo-heathen, and it is neo-heathen. And neo-heathens love to come down on New Age. Well, neo-heathen is part of the New Age because it's brand new. It's been made up and thrown together. And as I said in one of my previous videos, the Pope of heathenism was talking about. He was talking about the gods. He was at, I don't know where he was. He was at some religious convention or something where, there's this place where people of different religions, I think it was some like Universalist church or something like that, and they invite, other people from other religions, and he was there to represent Asatru. And he started talking about Thor, and he started talking about Thor as this mindless thug who just responds and is like a bull in a china shop, and he's got a really bad temper and all that. And I shared about that I became just absolutely furious listening to that complete lack of knowledge of, showed a complete lack of knowledge of the lore that if Asatrus worship anything, they worship the lore, which is just the mythology. And to not know that in the mythology that Thor is actually a god of the mind. And you can talk to Vedics as well, and they'll explain to you Indra, which is Thor, is a god of the mind. He's not this thug. So I just needed, as I was writing this book, and I had just come out of, I was being pummeled by all of these neo-heathens for not following their politically correct, racist, exclusive, whatever, nonsense they wanted to shove down my throat. I felt the need to stand out. Now I no longer feel that need. It's been long enough. People are pretty clear where I'm at. Somebody comes on my channel, if they start even hinting at racism, I block them, or I severely, slice them a new one. So I think, who knows what they think of me? I honestly don't care. But that's the lead up to what I'm about to read, which is now you understand why I was writing these things that I was writing. Which, if I were to write this book over again, I would not even address the issue, because it's just such a childish, immature, completely nonsensical non-issue. But here we go. So I had even forgotten about this word. The Universalist debate is the title of this chapter. And I had even forgot about that, universalism versus folkism, as if there's this split that has to happen. Anyway, it's just such a ridiculous nonsense thing. But anyway, here's what I had to say back then, almost 10 years ago. The Universalist debate. I have to say this is a non-issue also. Every single existing traditional polytheist religion has some form of internal debate similar to this issue. The idea that the Universalist controversy was somehow non-existent among the priests of our pre-Christian ancestors is naive and based on a misunderstanding of Indo-European polytheism. Simply perform a mere cursory investigation into the theological debates among the different sects of Hinduism, and you will see much more than a folkism versus universalism debate. If that is the only theological division in modern neo-heathenry, then we are doing much better than our Hindu cousins. See, I was even trying to lump myself in as a neo-heathen, and I'm not. Absolutely not. All right, continuing. We are doing much better than our Hindu cousins who have been practicing blah, 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 blah. In my opinion, this issue of universalism should not be a debate that predicates one's worthiness to practice heathenry. And again, I don't even use that word. It's such a stupid word, heathenry. Remember that the words heathen and pagan were words used by Christians to call people who practiced indigenous polytheist religions. They were calling them rednecks. They were calling them uneducated, stupid hicks. That's what pagan means. That's what heathen means. It's never meant anything else, except in modern times when neo-heathens want to give themselves some kind of word that separates them from Christians. They're actually using the words that Christians used, pagan and heathen. They're derogatory. There's nothing positive about them. You can call yourself that if you want. I never will. All right, let's continue. Religion is about emphasis. People will naturally gravitate toward their own personal proclivities. Some people are more literal-minded and some are more abstract. Each emphasis has its uses and benefits. However, in terms of the literal meaning of the word universalism, the Norse myths are by definition universalist. Odin, Vili, and Ve breathed life into the first humans, not the first white people. The body of Ymir is used to create the entire cosmos, not just Europe. I could go on, but you get the point. In other words, the Norse mythology is the same as every other mythology around the world. It talks about the creation of the universe, the creation of the gods, the creation of human beings. There's until you get into modern times, when you get into the first Hebrew monotheists, they start making it into an ethnic-centered thing. And then that's picked up by the Christians, and then that's picked up by the Muslims, and even, whether they say it or not. When I grew up as a kid, I remember hearing the stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all of that, and thinking they were my ancestors. And that's, we can't help but look at mythology as everybody. The truth is, those myths were not designed, when the people were writing it, they weren't expecting that, Northern Europeans were going to be reading it as though they were reading their own ethnic history. This was something that was designed to create a political movement within, we've talked about this before, so that the Hebrew people, the Jewish people, because by then it was Judea and I forget the other section, where all the 12 tribes had split. And it was all about it was all about nationalism. And so all of that talk about their ancestors was a way of bringing the nation together. So neo-heathens are somehow trying to do this with the Norse myths, or some neo-heathens. And they want to look at, Odin, Vili, and Ve as being three white people that lived in Europe at some point. And, they're right now living on a cloud somewhere, stroking their beards. They want to take it that literally. And they don't realize that while they're telling everybody how much they don't like the Bible and Christianity, they're using the very same filter of interpretation and using it for the Norse gods, who were never intended to be seen as actual humans that walked around doing things. All right, so that's enough of that. We can stop talking about that nonsense for a while. All right, next chapter is called Awo. I have already shared that I have been trained in West African animist drumming by my Yoruba teachers. The Yoruba people have a word for unfathomable ancestral spirit power. That word is awo. Many things can be called awo. A person can be awo based on their spiritual power. Priests are often given the title babalawo, which means baba and father and awo. So it means the priest or the father of unfathomable mysteries. In personal relationship context, grandparents in the Yoruba tradition are also called awo, because grandparents are one's immediate ancestors who are seen as being closer to the original ancestors. The Yoruba gods themselves are also called awo. I have known about this word in the Yoruba language for some time and have learned a great deal from contemplating the spiritual principle of awo. But recently, I was doing some research into the Proto-Germanic language and read that the word for grandfather in the Proto-Indo-European language was, drum roll, awo. The Latin version of ancestor is, it's spelled with a V, but it's pronounced avus. The Spanish language still retains this Indo-European root in the word abuelo and the feminine abuela, respectively meaning grandfather and grandmother. So it's awola, awola, abuela, abuelo. The Proto-Germanic word for grandfather was awa haimaj. Awa is grandfather, haimaj means intimate or one's own. The fact that intimate is attached to the root of awo indicates to me that there was a difference between a personal awo and a cosmic ancestral force of awo. If so, then our Germanic ancestors had exactly the same understanding of awo as the Yoruba people still have. The extinct Gothic language, which is possibly the oldest known Germanic dialect, used the exact same pronunciation of awo. Coincidence? According to the Paleolithic continuity paradigm, the Proto-Indo-European language was brought into Europe with the first modern humans from Africa 50,000 years ago. I find it much too conveniently coincidental that the West African Yoruba language, which to my knowledge is not recognized as being derived from Indo-European languages, would have the exact same word for grandfather as the Indo-European languages did. I can only assume that at some point in the very distant past, when the modern human race was beginning to migrate from their original home in East Africa, that one tribe of humans who used the word awo to designate ancestors split off into two directions. One tribe who later became the ancestors of the Yoruba people began to migrate west, and another tribe that would eventually become the ancestors of the Indo-Europeans continued to migrate northward until eventually arriving in Europe. And then I have this wonderful map right there showing all kinds of great things, which you can look at if you get the book. If this is true, then that would mean that this same word of awo was being spoken by our mutual ancestors at least 60,000 years ago, before the passage through the Sahara Desert opened up and allowed humans to safely migrate out of northern Africa into Arabia and then into Europe. I don't know about you, but that possibility blows my mind. How old is this word awo? Once again, this is another connection that I would not have made without my previous experience in other spiritual disciplines. I have not heard of any linguists making this connection between Africa and Europe concerning the word awo. This underscores that we can only find treasure in the places that we look. If we have an unconscious assumption that prevents us from finding connections in certain places or in certain cultures, we won't even bother looking for them. And if we don't look, we won't find. If I had not been taught some songs in the Yoruba language by my African teachers, I would have no idea that we shared the identical word for grandfather and ancestral mystery. As a result of this final discovery, the last barrier of racial and cultural boundaries in my mind has come tumbling down. There is no way that I can look at anyone again, regardless of race or culture, and not see them as my relative. I can no longer just intellectually accept that we humans of all races are merely the same species. I now have a tangible feeling that anyone on this planet may be directly related to me, and indeed must be directly related to me at some point in the very distant past during that migration out of East Africa 60,000 years ago. We really are one big family. Hail Sa to all of my relatives on earth of all races, religions, and cultures. And then let's see, then I have a title called Resources. Let me see, do I even need to talk about that? No, you don't need to have me read through those resources because I was just starting to make them. You already have the links right up here above my head. So that's it. Awakening Sleipnir. We are finally done. I don't think there's any questions anybody has on here. Let me refresh the page. Looks like there's only 4 or 5 people even watching. Refreshing the page. Yeah, there's only 4 people watching, so there aren't even any questions. So that's perfectly fine. We don't need to answer any of them. So I just uploaded a couple of videos. If you haven't seen them already, go watch them. And lockdown.thunderwizard.com. If you haven't checked it out, do now. Do now. That's a command. Go ahead and check that out. I'm giving away $3,214 worth of all of my video teachings. The only thing you're paying for is some personal interaction with me for, I think, 5 different services. And then thunderwizard.com is the subscription site. If you'd like to, please subscribe there. You will get access to videos that you won't get on this channel. And there are multiple levels of subscription. It's what keeps the lights on, helps me to continue to make these videos. And then courses.thunderwizard.com have books and DVDs, but everything else is on the lockdown package. Subscribe and hit the bell button. And that's it. I don't really have anything else to say, so we're done with the book. I'll keep doing this with all of my books. And I guess that's it for me today. All right, guys. Thanks, and I shall see you all next time.